Coming at you live from the floor of my apartment, the 5 most unsettling books that I have read in 2022. Perfect for the Halloween season, which is why I have the ears on, obviously, because I can be festive sometimes. I'm just gonna get into it because then I tend to ramble. But also you can follow my TikTok, and also I have a book club. Starting November 8th, we're gonna be reading 3 Women by Lisa Taddeo, which I'm so excited about. This tells the story of 3 American women and their sex lives and sort of like their intimacy and desire. It's nonfiction, but it reads a lot more like fiction. It's very narrative. I read a few chapters so far just to get into it. I can tell you it's really good, so I'm so excited about that. But anyway, without further ado, let me fix my ears. The first one I read was Leave the World Behind, and I think I talked a little bit about this book in the one other YouTube video I made. I have never felt more anxious while reading a book. If you've ever seen Uncut Gems and you know that feeling of anxiety and unease that you have the entire time while watching that movie, this feels like that. It's like the Safdie brothers wrote a book or something. It follows a family who's living in Brooklyn and they decide to, quote, leave the world behind and go to Long Island for a brief family vacation. While they're there, the owners of the home come back and they're like, hey, by the way, New York is like, the world is ending, essentially. So they're like, can we come back to our home? And these people are like, okay. You don't really know what's happening the entire time. So I would definitely recommend this one really for any time of the year though. And I do think it's being adapted. No, I think it's either maybe Amazon or Hulu are adapting it into a series. Personally, I love a good book to movie adaptation. Definitely not your conventional thriller, but I think that's really the strength of it. The next book I want to talk about is The Discomfort of Evening, and that is such an apt title for this book because I felt so uncomfortable while reading it. The writing itself and the pacing I thought were great. It was really just the content that I couldn't read more than like 50 pages at a time because it is so heavy and it just gets worse as it goes on. I've never read A Little Life, and I know people talk about how emotionally taxing that book is, and that's really how I can describe it here. It's about a family living on a Dutch dairy farm. They're very religious, and the first chapter, their son dies, like in a tragic accident. And so this follows the son's younger sister and sort of just her perspective on her family's grief, events that follow his death. It is very heartbreaking, but very unsettling, but really good. The writing is just stellar. The next book I have is Motherthing, and now this is a recently published book. It just came out in October, and it is so creepy. I think this is really a horror book for fans of Ottessa Moshfegh or Mona Awad. It follows Abby, and her mother-in-law is living with her and her husband in her husband's childhood home. That makes sense. And her mother-in-law has a lot of mental health issues, and the first sentence in the book is her mother-in-law's violent death by self-harm. So that's how it starts, and then it just sort of becomes psychological and gory from there. So they start to feel like their mother-in-law is still living in the house. She's still in the basement where she died. She's haunting them. She's making them do certain things. So while Abby sort of throws herself into her work and she becomes so hyper fixated on becoming a mother, Ralph, her husband, just totally like abandons all personal responsibilities. He becomes almost childlike again in the wake of his mother's death. So it is very disturbing. I feel like, I don't know the word for it, but I know that certain people have like food phobias. They're just very sensitive to like certain types of foods or foods that are already chewed. This book may not be for you if you have any of that, because descriptions of food, like food plays such a central role in this book, and I will probably never be able to look at salmon the same way again after reading this. If you have any weird like food phobias or like any weird icks with food, go in with a grain of salt with this one. But otherwise, like, the writing is very, not whimsical, but it's very entertaining, and it's really one for like I said, for like fans of Ottessa Moshfegh or Mona Awad. The next book I want to talk about is The Only Good Indians, which follows 4 Native American men, and they're all bonded by sort of a shameful secret. It was an act that they performed together, but this act is very culturally specific. It's something that violates the tradition or the values of their tribe, and the manifestation of that guilt or of that action comes back to haunt each of the men one at a time. It's very gory, very violent, but really cinematic. Like, the way that it's described, you can almost see it on screen, and so I think it would make a really great film or TV adaptation. Again, very gory. I think if you like literary fiction but also want something very violent, then this is for you. And then finally, The Vegetarian, which I think is gaining more prominence on TikTok. It is also very gory. It follows a woman in South Korea who just one day decides she doesn't want to eat meat anymore, and then sort of the ramifications of that decision across members of her family. So there's different parts to the book, and the first part is like her husband's reaction, her brother-in-law's reaction, her sister's reaction. There are parts of it that are just incredibly violent and upsetting. And I feel like obviously I don't speak, well, not obviously, because you never know, but I don't speak Korean and I don't read Korean, but I did feel like there was something kind of off with the translation. Like I felt that there was some things that were maybe missing, and I can't tell if that was the author or the translator, but I did do a little bit of digging and I found that there was some controversy with the way that it was translated. So I would be interested to see maybe another version, but I still think all around the structure and the content and like the heart of the story was there. I think people either love or hate this book. I feel like if you like Gone Girl, you would like this book. Not that they're at all similar, but maybe just the vibe of it. Okay, so those have been the 5 most unsettling books that I read this year. Proceed with caution. I also want to give an honorable shout out to The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I loved that book. The dialogue is so stellar, but it is incredibly psychological and made me feel very uneasy. Like at first it's all fun. I'm like, oh, this is fun. I love the characters. I think they're so funny. And then as it goes on, I'm like, oh my God, did that just happen? It is sort of a traditional haunted house type of book, but there's also a psychological quality to it that I think just makes it like that much more scary. Yeah, those are my favorite. I hope that if you've read any of them, let me know what you thought. If you hated any of them, I guess let me know. I don't know what I'll do with that information, but you can let me know. Join the book club, by the way. And that's it. Thanks.